This is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something Else.
Something Else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matan, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 168 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 33 from February the 19th, 2003 from Nashville, Tennessee. My name is Aria, and joining me, as always, is the Disgraceland to my Shark Boy. It's Cindy. Cindy, how the hell are you today, Cindy? Now that I'm saying your name right, Cindy. Not to confuse with my other co-host, Cindy. You're Cindy.
Join us next week when a new co-host will be presenting the show alongside Aria, because Disgraceland is part of this show, and you know a gimmick is bad when the wrestler itself calls it the gimmick that, quote, we'll talk more about this later, but I'm going to do the quote right now. The heart kind of died inside from something he loved and looked up to, from something he loved to cherish, to something less than showing off your athletic talents.
To be fair, it wasn't like he's like this great worker otherwise. There's a reason, we might as well just talk about it. There's a reason, the guy never did anything.
No, let's save it. Let's save it.
Yeah,
let's save it.
Whatever.
There are layers to this.
Layers. I didn't even think it counted as layer. By the way, before we get into the crap show that is this show, this is considered a good episode. This is considered a good episode of TNA. Yeah. Good. More people like this show than did not like this show. All right. So before we get into this, let's tell you what's happening in the world of TNA outside of this, what's on this program this week. Now, Cindy, pray tell, do you recall a few weeks ago when I told you that they signed a deal with Australia, but the deal with Australia only airs one live pay-per-view every month?
Yeah.
You'll be happy to know they signed a brand new TV deal this week. Doesn't that sound exciting? With Australia. So Australia is going to get a weekly TV show building up to their one live pay-per-view every month. Doesn't that sound awesome? This is where you say yes.
Explosion?
Nope, I did not say that. But doesn't that sound awesome that they're going to air a weekly TV show in Australia to build to their one live pay-per-view every month? This is where you say yes.
No.
I promise, yes, that is something that wrestling companies do. But now, since they're not doing Explosion, do you want to know what they are doing to build up to their one live pay-per-view every month?
What?
The 4 TV shows that will precede the one live pay-per-view every month are the original pay-per-views from June and July of 2002 being shown in order. So let's say this week's show is the one that aired live. I don't know if it is or isn't. I'm assuming it is based on, today's intro. But to build to this episode this week, they aired Ken Shamrock winning the world title, AJ Styles winning the X title, AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn winning the tag titles, and the Tennessee Titans beating up Jeff Jarrett. That is the build to this week's pay-per-view with Jeff Jarrett versus AJ Styles for the NWA World Title.
Couldn't have they just aired? God, they were better off airing Explosion.
They would have been better off, coming up with an Australia exclusive show or some shit. But yes, that crap that we watched, the midget beaten off in a trash can. Oh yeah. We're gonna have Dusty Rhodes on this show talking about the midget beating off in a trash can, which is airing live in Australia, and they don't know about that until next month.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Again, somehow we were never at war with Australia. I'd like to think making them watch this is enough of a reason for them to declare war on us.
I don't know. Give it 4 months' time. I'm pretty sure our current screwed up Congress will actually figure out a way.
Oh, when we have the entire world deciding to finally get together so they can declare war on us. It'll be so nice that we managed to get the other 217 sovereign nations in the world to finally act as one. We got world peace, just for everyone other than us.
Yeah.
All right. So elsewhere in TNA, you recall our former authority figure, Bullet Bob Armstrong, how he was around for, he was around for a few months. And, he was a pretty good authority figure. Do you know why he's not in the company anymore?
No, why?
He quit because he asked for a $50 raise from $300 to $350 a week. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, Bullet Bob, they already have enough, people who are on the TV show and not, not wrestling. So maybe it's fine to have one fewer person, right? Well, you might notice that there was a feud that was being built up for what felt like a month that suddenly everybody disappeared. Do you remember when BG James and Scott Armstrong were feuding up until like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
They both quit. Now, we know BG James does come back. Well, they may have had their own thing. They may have also been turned down for their own raises. But now we know, of course, BG James does come back. But honestly, I'm not sure if Scott ever does or he ever comes back into wrestling, at least, until his WWE run in a few years.
I don't think so either.
And then two former Big Two company wrestlers appeared backstage at TNA looking for work. The recently fired Bull Buchanan and the hasn't really been seen on a regular basis in 10 years, Eric Watts showed up backstage looking for work. And sure enough, as you know, and a lot of people listening to this probably know, Eric Watts is on his way in. I don't know if I would have hired either of them, but I guess if I was going to hire either of them, I would have hired Bull Buchanan. I don't know about you.
Yeah, Bull had the more upside, and this is coming off. Was this before or after his run as Bling Bling Buchanan or B Squared?
Oh yeah, this is after. He was.
Oh wow.
He was in WWE until January, and then got future endeavored.
Mm.
And then he was replaced by Rodney Mack, and then Rodney Mack got taken from him and put with Teddy Long. And by him, I mean John Cena. Bull Buchanan and Rodney Mack were the seconds for John Cena. But it was more important that he get put with Teddy Long, who was just with D'Lo Brown, and now D'Lo Brown is fired. Oh well. On to the show, shall we? So, Cindy, we're going to start this show with one of the best parts of this show. although I'm highly conflicted about it. It starts with a 5-minute video package recapping the last 4 weeks. Now, I'm highly conflicted about this. And on one hand, it is an excellent idea to give detailed video packages recapping the last few shows in case you have somebody who may have missed a couple shows, and this way they're caught up. That's a great idea. The
Right.
problem is, I then had to rewatch all the fucking shit I've been watching for the past month.
Yeah,
Then,
especially since we have the military stuff, the militia stuff in there.
yes, that was just crap. So then, remember last week when AJ Styles pulled up to the arena and then couldn't get out of his car? Well, we have an improvement over last week already because AJ Styles pulled up to the arena and got out of the car with no problem. He got out of the passenger seat. Now, who, pray tell, is in the driver's seat? Well, you might be thinking, okay, well, he just had that feud with Larry Zbyszko, where Larry Zbyszko is now his mentor. So it must have been
Mhm.
Larry Zbyszko. You got a world title match tonight. So Larry Zbyszko is giving his boy some pointers and some tips, in his effort to win the world title tonight for the very first time. That's obviously who was in the front seat, right, Cindy?
Would make a lot of sense.
Yes. Turns out it wasn't Larry Zbyszko. It was the person that has to make everything about him. It is, of course, Vince motherfucking Russo. And turns out Russo drove him to the building. AJ got out, stormed by Goldie, and went into the arena. And that's going to set off this week's swerve because, Vince Russo is writing, so, everything is a fucking swerve. And we'll get to that later too. But I mean, Mike Tenay would not shut up the entire show about how this proves that AJ Styles is with Vince Russo and yada 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 yada.
Oh
And
Lord, yeah.
it's a Vince Russo book show, so you know what that means. But before we get to that point, before we even get to that point, what was it, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when AJ and Larry Zbyszko had that 10-minute match that AJ had to win twice in 10 minutes in order to whatchamacallit, I don't know, if he didn't beat Larry twice in 10 minutes, then then Larry would become his mentor. Since that point, have these two ever appeared on camera together other than AJ's already in the ring and Larry Zbyszko walks out in the middle of some angle?
Not really.
Exactly. They're making great use of this stupid angle. All right, so we go to the arena
Yeah.
where we kick things off with the finals of the number one contenders tag team tournament. It is Harris and Harris versus Harris and Storm, Ron and Don versus Chris and James. And the winner of this tournament will, and I quote, eventually face Triple X to determine the new tag team champions. Now, I get that the reason why they can't give us a date is because there never seems to be a period when 2 out of 3 members of Triple X aren't in Japan. In that case, then you just make this the tournament finals, have AMW win, because spoiler, AMW wins this match, and then when Triple X comes back, they're like, "Hey, motherfuckers, we didn't lose those belts. We want them back." But that would be too easy because this is TNA. So, 50 seconds into the match, Mike Tenay announces America's Most Wanted has come out here with fire. Cindy, would it have surprised you at all on a Vince Russo booked show if Chris Harris and James Storm actually came out there with fire?
Not really, no.
Yeah. So, no, he just means they were punching a lot. Storm at one point stepped off Chris Harris's back to do a plancha to the outside, and Ron and Don did not catch him at all. but still, quote unquote, took the move. So Storm splattered on the mat, and Ron and Don fell down around them.
Yeah,
Um,
that sounded gross, by the way.
yes, yes, it did. Um, the Harrises got the heat on Harris when Don pulled Chris outside, threw him into a barricade, and hit him with a chair. The referee was probably picking his nose at this point. Chris got the tag to Storm after a spear to Ron, but Don went old school yo and distracted the referee, so the tag wasn't allowed. And thus there ended up not actually being a hot tag, as Harris pinned Harris when Chris pinned Ron after a surprise small package. Um, the match itself was not special, but it had a clean finish. The match had a winner, the match had a loser, and the segment ended. So we're already off to a better start than 95% of the usual crap we see. And just, I probably overrated it just based on the fact that they let the match happen and then ended it and moved on to something else. I gave it a 3.5 out of 10.
I think this is the point of the show that we have to explain to people that when Arya does her rankings, she usually goes by the star ranking system done by Meltzer and those of the Wrestling Observer and those who vote and who've done stuff for them. I don't. And my rating system is a little more looser than hers. I say that because that gets thrown out the window a couple matches from now. But for this match, I gave it a 5 out of 10. I thought it was a perfectly average match.
I was ready for it to give you a fucking 10 with all the explanation.
I may be a lot more forgiving, but I am not deaf and blind.
I mean, to be fair, I've not seen you take go to a doctor. So, for all I know, you may be hard of hearing or hard of seeing. I mean, you don't wear glasses. That doesn't mean you don't wear contact, you know? Show me a picture of you putting your finger in your eye, or I'm going to think you're blind.
Wouldn't that just make me blind?
Yes.
That's why
For
I'm
the
not
record,
doing it.
yeah, that one slipped away from me.
1
So
nothing for Cindy.
that's what this show does to you, though. This show just takes away all confidence. Like honestly, here let me tell you how I normally watch these shows. Like when I watch Mid South or World Class or Smoky Mountain, I constantly have my finger on the pause button so I could stop and take notes and do timestamps of stuff I want to play, shit like that. This show, I started watching this show. I turned it on at exactly 10 o'clock this morning, and I actually was texting Trey about this. I said, I am going to press play on this. I am not going to press pause. I'm not going to press stop. It's going to end in exactly 1 hour and 55 minutes. And if I miss something, then that's their fault for overlooking something so fast that I didn't have a chance to, properly digest it. That is what TNA has done to me. So I may have missed something that you may need to fill in, but I guess we'll see when we get that far. But Vince Russo is backstage yelling at Mike Sanders, Glenn Gilberti, and Goldilocks, and then the Harris twins. Russo shoved Ron and Don and threatened to kick their ass. Ron and Don Harris, 6'4", 6'5", 260, 270 pound. Like they're the most boring wrestlers in the world, but they look tough. They look like badasses. However, they back down because they're just a couple pussies, and Vince Russo's the real badass on the show. In case you thought they were really tough or anything,
Mm-hmm.
or were wondering who's actually booking this shit.
Well, you're looking at the person who's booking that shit. Because isn't Jerry Jarrett gone right now? Gone now?
Pretty much. Whatchamacallit, Dave actually said in the Observer this week that Jerry Jarrett was there at the show, but everyone said the show was put together by Russo and Jeff.
Explains the finish.
So then Mike Tenay, as we talked about, Mike Tenay screams and yells at AJ Styles the entire show, completely telegraphing what the real swerve of the show is. But he yells about AJ Styles having the audacity to accept a ride from Vince Russo. So Russo stormed to the ring and told Tenay to get the fuck in the ring if he wanted an explanation as to why AJ was with him. Russo said the truth was that he sat down with 23-year-old AJ Styles and explained to him who the real Jeff Jarrett was. The Jeff Jarrett that has a black heart and will do anything he can to retain the title. Russo says AJ's with him now. Swerve alert. Tenay, who just, by the way, here's where it gets great. Tenay, who just threw a hissy fit about AJ Styles potentially joining Russo, refused to believe it when Russo said that AJ joined him. So, yeah, this show is just booked for fucking people with OCD, I guess. Russo then took credit for what big stars DX, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin were. Thank you, Vince Russo, for telling us to go watch the real stars on the other show.
Spoiler alert, both of them will be gone in 2 months.
Still. But it's like, oh yeah, he doesn't talk about how, what stars they have in TNA. He doesn't talk about Jeff Jarrett. He doesn't talk about, I don't even know who the hell else the next star would be. He doesn't talk about the truth. He doesn't talk about AJ Styles. He doesn't talk about AMW. He doesn't talk about his own guys. He doesn't fucking talk about Disco Inferno and Mike Sanders.
Or Raven.
Your guys. There you go. Talk about Raven. Talk about how you made Raven, even though I don't think he's ever been in the same company as Raven at any point, which is kind of funny when you think about that. But fine. Let's say he made Raven. Okay? Fine. That at least puts over your own fucking show. Instead, he puts over all the stars on the other show. Suddenly, banjos begin playing, and Dusty Rhodes walks out. Why does he have banjos as his theme song? Who knows? Why has he worn the same Cleveland Brown shirt every week that he's been on the show? Who knows?
Maybe he's a Browns fan.
Yes, but does he not have more than one Brown shirt? I mean, I have more than one Bills hoodie. I don't wear the same Bills hoodie every time I do these shows. Though to be fair, I only have 2 Bills hoodies, so I just go back and forth, but still. Sorry, I thought I had to burp there, so I pressed mute and then I didn't burp. So, welcome to my life.
There, I burped for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dusty said he is going nowhere until Vince Russo appreciates tradition. This show only has 2 hours. Anyway, Dusty spoke gibberish for a few minutes, which was, believe it or not, this is not the worst promo on the show. But Dusty speaks gibberish about tradition and Viagra and midgets beating off in trash cans, which again was the only episode of this show he ever watched, and you can't tell me otherwise. Russo mentioned that until now, him and Dusty never crossed paths, which is true because Dusty got fired from WCW right before Russo got hired. And so he wondered why Dusty would hate him. So he brings up Goldust because, again, the stars are on the other show. And he talked about how he was more of a father to Dustin Rhodes than Dusty ever was. Dusty then takes off his belt and says that he will do to Russo what Russo's daddy should have done and give Vinny a nice ass whooping. Russo accepted a one-on-one match with 3-time world champion Dusty Rhodes. And so Ron and Don Harris hit the ring. And then we have this week's random ass surprise. Now, we've had some random ass surprises the last month. Some end up being a success, like Raven. And I say some being a success. The one success in all these random people coming in is Raven. We've also had the Road Warriors. We've had Nikita Koloff. We had the fucking Sandman, last week. So in the spirit of random ass people who were part of the Attitude Era. Well, I guess Nikita Koloff wasn't, but in the spirit of people from 90s wrestling, or actually, yeah, we'll say 90s WCW, because Sandman was in WCW in the 90s. In the spirit of bringing in people from 1990s WCW, out comes Vader. Yes, Vader. Now, I know that, some people remember Vader coming into WWE in like 2005 when they were going to do Jonathan Coachman versus Batista at Taboo Tuesday, and Vader was going to be in Coach's corner, and he fell on his ass, and he was like really overweight. He's pretty overweight here, but not quite at 2005 falling on his ass overweight. And Dusty Rhodes and Vader get into a fight with Ron and Don Harris, and eventually they make, I I believe it could be a tag match, but I think it's a 3-on-2 handicap match for next week. I'll take your $10 for next week's show now, Cindy.
It was a tag match that was made official. Be Dusty and Vader versus the Harris brothers. And Vader, and if people watching this show are wondering, Vader? I mean, the guy who flamed out in WWE about 98? Big bad piece of shit, that sort of thing. What not a lot of people remembered is because after that, he got some gigs in Japan with Stan Hansen, and they formed a tag team. They did All Japan, I do believe, because New Japan was with WCW at the time.
He was the he went to All Japan in '99 and beat Mitsuharu Misawa for the Triple Crown.
Yep. Vader got into great shape, but Vader then got old. Age. Yeah. Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah. Hey, I've seen Vader wrestle one match live, and it was at an indie show over WrestleMania weekend in 2012. They did a legend show, and he took on two local guys in a handicap match, which was exactly what you think it was.
Just squash, like we would see on WCW Saturday night in the early 90s.
Yes, except he didn't break anyone's back.
It's a step in the right direction.
But yeah, so we're building up. Fine, it's a tag match for next week. Okay, we'll get to this later. But trust me, and Vince was booking this show, so I'm sure everyone understands this. They will make you not want to see this match by the end of this show. Not that you may ever want to have seen the match, but they'll take away any desire to see it within the next hour and a half. So backstage, Goldilocks and a man named Lorenzo Papa are interviewing Jerry Lynn. Lorenzo turns out is the guy that won the auction to be a backstage interviewer, and I believe he's one of like 3 people who we ever see get to cash in their auction winnings for something. And so he interviews Jerry Lynn, and I don't know. Dave Meltzer thought that he did a good job, and I do not. He was stumbling over his words. Like he had a good voice. Like when he wasn't stumbling over words, he had good delivery, but it was just him. He wasn't mumbling, but like it wasn't a very good interview. He wasn't a very good interviewer, I should say. So the point of this was Jerry Lynn won the X Division #1 contenders match last week, and he is not going to take his match and will get his title match, quote unquote, eventually. There's that word again. By the way, we might want to make a note of this one. We'll see if Jerry Lynn ever gets an X Division title match again. But anyway, so he's given up the title shot to the person that he beat last week, Paul London, and instead he is going to have a 3-way match against the 2 people who got eliminated first in that match, the SAT, who are, if you recall last week, there was Conan. And basically that was the whole point of this interview, was he explained that that's what's happening. He's not going to get a title match this week, and is instead going to wrestle the SAT in what is essentially a handicap match. And then it ends with Goldie telling Lorenzo he did a good job. And I wrote she's probably just thrilled that he won't be taking her job.
More or less. I thought the interview was fine. I thought he was okay. I mean, I thought he was better than Goldie. I mean, Goldie doesn't get enough blowback as some of the worst backstage interviewers of all time. And if I were to come up with a top 5 worst, I think she would be up there. Maybe number 4. I'm torn
You really think
between.
you ever on the worst backstage interviewers?
Yeah.
Like, have you blocked a lot of this period out of your mind? Because like Terry Runnels was doing Raw for like 2 years, I think.
Oh, she's number 2.
I heard that's who the hell's number 1 at this point.
And from 2003 back.
Well, you said top 5 worst, and Terry Runnels is only number 2. Who the hell's number 1?
Stephanie Wyan.
She I don't even really count her. Like, I know she occasionally did, but it's like she was mostly just the host of Mania with Todd Pettensmell.
Mm-hmm. So if I were to do it from, we'll say the cutoff is this show. If I were to
This
give
show, as in today in February of 2025, or this show as in February,
2003.
whatever the hell day this is, 2003.
2003.
Okay.
Here are the top 5 that I have. 5, Pamela Paulshock. 4, Goldie. 3, Joe Fowler.
He did like one show.
He did SummerSlam in 93 and he sucked.
And then I don't think he ever did it again.
He hosted All American Wrestling for 13 weeks.
And who the hell ever watched All American Wrestling?
He replaced Gene Okerlund. He was supposed to be Gene Okerlund's replacement for WWE.
And instead they got Todd Pettensmell.
Todd Pettengill replaced Fowler.
Todd Pettensmell was already there because like he was doing the SummerSlam reports like, at least a few weeks before the show. And then when Todd Pettensmell left in 97, you know who he brought in? Michael Cole.
Cole's fine as a backstage interviewer. I have no problems with Cole.
In case you ever hate Michael Cole, it's Todd Pettengill's fault.
Number 2, Terry Rhodes. And number 1, I had said earlier, Stephanie Wyan. And that's off the top of my head.
I would put fucking Alex Marvez in there. Do you remember? Although I guess he was a much worse. That one week they tried to have him do color commentating. That was awful.
Yeah, but I said it was from 2003 back. Marvez is after. I have another top 5 list for that.
And all right, so Jerry. Oh my God. Oh, I guess it's 2003. I was thinking about Rebecca DiPietro, but that was 2007.
Yeah, 2006, 2007.
So then we get Jerry Lynn versus Joel Maximo with Conan versus Jose Maximo with Conan. By the way, do you ever need proof that this is a very much a Vince Russo show? The show has plenty of guest color commentators because Vince Russo, in addition to not respecting, people who wrestle, thinking anybody can do it, he also doesn't respect announcers, thinking that anybody can be an announcer. And so that was one of the things that always happened on Nitro was people are always being sent out to do guest commentary. And so Conan was here to do guest commentary and it was basically him just yelling over Tenay and complaining about Mike Tenay calling moves and complaining about how the X Division is just ripping off Lucha Libre and yada 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 yada. Um, and this was technically a three-way, but I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was a handicap match.
Yeah.
Um, and Conan was yelling about how the SAT were the best tag team in the promotion. And while this is happening, Jerry Lynn is single-handedly beating their asses at the same time. The finish saw the Maximals go for the Spanish Fly. Lynn reversed it into a double bulldog. Somehow, one Maximo gave the other a tombstone, and then Lynn pinned one of them with a cradle pile driver. After the match, Conan gets in the ring to yell at his boys for losing. I would like to remind you they just got put together last week and they are already fighting with each other. It's also important for you to remember this is the SAT's penultimate match in TNA. They will be here one more time at the end of May to wrestle Triple X, and that's it. So this is a legendary group right here. I must tell you that.
5-star
Um,
group.
Now, with that said, Jerry Lynn versus the SAT, I don't want to say it's impossible to have a bad match, but I mean, it's Jerry Lynn versus the SAT. It's almost a guarantee that it's going to be at least, competent. But again, imagine if this match or these matches were taking place in a competent promotion. 5.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 4.0 out of 10. It was okay, I guess.
Just realize this is only the second match of the show.
Yeah.
So Raven is backstage talking about some wacky match he is having tonight. He compares this match to his parents only wanting one child, which was his sister, but then they had him. Raven then talks about how the happiest moment in his life was when he took the Sandman's wife and son from him, and he will never forgive the Sandman for taking his wife and son back from him. And then he leaves with the microphone, and Goldilocks has to chase him down. While Goldilocks is chasing Raven down to get her microphone back, Vince Russo storms by, leaving the building, and Sonny Siaki comes by, and we can't really hear this because eventually Goldie gets her microphone and runs back, and we still can barely hear it. But essentially, the point of this is that Sonny Siaki is going to be in charge the rest of the show. David Flair, in his only appearance, tries to stop him, but Russo kept saying he has to leave. So yes, TNA runs one show a week, Wednesday nights from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and Russo has to leave 40 minutes into the show. I'll say the only positive I can think of is at least he didn't say he had a meeting that he had to go to. Goldilocks, by this point, got her stolen mic back, so we heard half of a promo. Because we didn't fucking hear David Flair at all. We barely heard Sonny Siaki, but we heard Russo's annoying voice. And so, yes, Russo is leaving the arena. More on that to come. But
I
your
thought
thoughts
that was
on...
Mortimer. Sorry, I thought that was Mortimer Plumtree. I think later on, Tanay said that was Mortimer.
Oh, he said David, so I assumed it was David Flair.
No, he was he was Vince Russo's height. David Flair is much taller than Russo.
Yeah, but Mortimer Plumtree isn't, taller than, isn't as tall as Russo. Because Russo's taller than AJ, and Mortimer Plumtree was as tall as AJ.
Exactly.
It ultimately it doesn't even fucking matter. If it is, yeah, Mortimer Plumtree's real name is David. So you see, it's a shoot if it was Mortimer Plumtree. I prefer to think it was David Flair. Not that it really matters either fucking way, because this show is just in the shitter here.
Mm-hmm. And now
then
we get the match. Let's go. You go. You start.
So Glenn Gilberti is in the ring talking about fake wrestling gimmicks. He talks about how you'll never see a man walking down the street carrying a 2x4. He talks about how do masked wrestlers cash their check, which, by the way, there's actually a funny story about that, but anyway, um, he says that he bases his characters on reality, and tonight he's introducing a man that is near and dear to our heart. Now, keep in mind, this show is 10 months old. This is episode number 33. We have already seen 3 Elvis impersonators on this show, who even the worst of them is at least occasionally have a good match on a good day with the right opponent. Because 3 fake Elvises are not enough in the first 8 months of this promotion's history, Glenn Gilberti introduces our newest fake Elvis, our newest Elvis impersonator, Disgraceland. And Disgraceland comes out. And for those who remember WCW gimmicks that lasted 1 week, it was Coach Buzz Stern, who I think had something to do with Glacier the one time. And
No, Coach Buster was Glacier.
I'm sorry, he was fucking involved with all that. He was a nothing WCW character who never did anything, and now he's being brought out here for 2 weeks to, because the whole point, and I'm sure if, Russo bro, what did you understand, bro, about Disgraceland? Yeah, it's supposed to be, a joke. It's supposed to be, we're bringing in a bad gimmick on purpose. We don't need to fucking put it on TV, you know? So, I'm sorry, he was actually Luther Biggs was his name, under the direction of Coach Buzz Stern, who was Glacier.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even give a fuck. And it's like, to make it, to put the cherry on the shit sundae here, Mike Sanders is at the announce table, and he just screams and screams and screams some more, because this is the funniest thing he's ever seen. And he just, Disgraceland wrestles Shark Boy, and Disgraceland wins with a neck breaker. Sanders is yelling about sex and peanut butter sandwiches and drugs and lesbians and sex idols. And after the match, they have peanut butter and banana sandwiches. You see, because that was Elvis's favorite sandwich. And I'm shocked they didn't bring out the Dup Cup outhouse and have him go sit on the toilet in there or some shit. So
No, because
Jorge
remember, somebody bought it for $50.
Well, that's insinuating that they actually went and picked it up and took it home with them.
Hmm.
So Jorge Estrada runs in and beats the shit out of all 3 men for about 7 seconds before being beaten down 3-on-1. And in case me mentioning a porta potty wasn't enough toilet humor for you, they dragged Estrada to the back to the SEX locker room where they put his head in the toilet. Sadly, this was not a winner leaves town match, and I was cursing myself for creating a rating system that could not be lower than 0. As yes, and it's not even like a rare rating at this point. I feel like I've done more of these than 10s on this fucking show. This match, 0.
I think the only 10 that we gave was the ladder match between Loki, AJ Styles, and Jerry Lynn.
Nope, I gave AJ Styles Amazing Red a 10.
And I think I give that one a 10 too. I I want to go a little more in depth on this, because some other interesting stuff was. It's even worse than you described. Because to play up this fat slob of Elvis, right before he died, when Shark Boy was taken out of the ring, Sanders and Disco gave Disgraceland the sandwich. He would eat the sandwich, or at least take a big bite out of the sandwich, and keep beating up on a Shark Boy. And then, before he gets thrown back into the ring, he grabs another sandwich, eats that, and eats a bite out of that before Shark Boy makes a little bit of a comeback. Also discussed in this match, Tenay blasts some of Gilberti's old ideas, like the Invisible Man, which, if you want to hear more blasting of that awful idea, go listen to Jim Cornette's podcast, because he pops a coronary every time one of his favorites actually does it. And then the Martians, where Tenay would be their leader. That's enough of this match. There was an interview done a couple of months ago. I think about 6 or so months ago. And somebody was interviewing Luther Biggs. Because he has a movie coming out, and even though he was a bit of a journeyman in the mid-90s to early 2000s, he was a pivotal point of Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, which was the organization Dusty started up in around late 99, early 2000, if you remember that. He came up with the idea. It was supposed to be an idea that would be on WCW Saturday Night in early 2000. Jimmy Hart came up with the idea, and it was supposed to be Hunkalove. This would be a honky tonk man sort of thing, where he isn't trying to be Elvis. It's just an Elvis inspired gimmick, kind of like Honky. So he did it in Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling under the name Burning Love, which is his favorite song. So he was originally supposed to be brought into TNA at the start, but they just took the idea of Burning Love, and that's how you get the Flying Elvis impersonators.
Which is not actually the case, but whatever.
Yeah.
The real reason is because either Jerry Jarrett or Vince Russo saw the movie Honeymoon in Vegas and saw the Flying Elvises, parachuting out of a plane,
Yeah.
and that's where they got the idea for the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
But by the way, Luther Biggs, number one, I'm not saying the guy had zero talent, but there's a reason. When everyone talks about, oh yeah, I remember all those WCW guys who got held down that they never did anything with. Nobody fucking mentions Luther Biggs. I'm not saying the guy had zero talent, but okay, you bring up, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. You look at the average TCW show, and way more than half those guys at some point got a spot, a regular spot in either WWE or TNA or ROH or something. This guy did. You know why this guy got a job at WCW in the late 90s? Because he was the guy that you may have heard the story where he was wrestling on the indies as Big Sexy, and Kevin Nash wanted to use that as his nickname. And so basically, to avoid any kind of a lawsuit, they signed the guy, to a contract and paid him. They paid him off so Kevin Nash could call himself Big Sexy. This guy wasn't exactly, this guy wasn't one of those people on the indies who were making, all this noise or whatever, or having these great matches. There's a reason nobody has ever heard of this fucking guy, basically. It's it's a laugh. It's oh, he had this great gimmick for an Elvis impersonator gimmick. It's fuck that. It's hell, look at his WCW matches. Here's the thing. In 1999 and 1998, Jimmy Hart had full control of WCW Saturday Night. He could do anything he wanted to with WCW Saturday Night. So if this guy was going to be a Elvis, a honky tonk man impersonator on WCW Saturday Night, he would have done more than do, from what I could tell, not even three fucking matches on Saturday Night. He did one fucking Saturday Night match in October 1999 as Luther Biggs defeating Dave Burkhead, and that was it. And this is during the Saturday Night era where like Adrian Byrd was getting a push on Saturday night. So it's not like, they were holding out for all the big name stars on the show either. So
No,
it's like,
the Honk a Lot for Burning Love gimmick was to take place in 2000. But then they shuttered Saturday Night and fired about
he was gone by March because you could see, like, okay, admittedly, like whatever he did, if he actually did wrestle outside of the little bit of results that are on Cage Match, they were on shows so small they weren't even reported. But he's out of WCW by like before Saturday Night even ended, so that's not even a good excuse. It's like I'm sorry, I don't begrudge anybody, but this guy got pretty much exactly what he should have gotten.
I was also bringing up that he was also a regular in like Memphis and stuff like that. So,
yeah. Then apparently he was on the Memphis show. Apparently that was so obscure that it's more obscure than the most obscure Memphis show that they had, at the time, because there's zero matches from him wrestling even in a Memphis territory.
USWA?
Like, no. Like take away the WCW shit that he did. He wrestled. Okay, I'm sorry. He wrestled in a company called CPW in 1996 in Harrogate, Tennessee. I don't know my Tennessee geography, but no one would call that Memphis. Here's a South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and that's about it. And here's the other thing. If this guy had any talent at this is the first of two matches we're going to see him have on this fucking show. And we've seen how many David Flair matches. We've seen how many Mike Sanders matches. We're about to see Glenn Gilberti get a main event heel push. In-ring talent is not needed to get a push in Vince Russo's world. And this guy is 2 and out. And he can blame, like, this is the one time I'll say that I'm going to defend fucking Vince Russo because, he can blame Russo all the fuck he wants, but, like, he didn't have the fucking talent to even get to the low level required by Vince Russo to be booked on the show.
Just know it'll get worse.
Yeah. So that's fucking Disgraceland.
Yep. We'll have more about Disgraceland in 2 weeks. So here's a promo package about Jarrett's Rise to the Top. It's actually well produced.
Yep. And again, conflicted because it also reminds you of all the shit that we've had to watch over the last few months. Goldilocks is now with J.J. Dillon, who is sick and disgusted that AJ Styles may be with Vince Russo. Larry Zbyszko walks in and asks what the hell is going on. Larry is a week late and $1 short. Kid Cash with Trinity defending the X Division title against Paul London. Paul London is now using Jerry Lynn's old music. And so he gets Jerry Lynn's title shot and his music. I didn't even notice what music Jerry Lynn used when he came out, but apparently it was not that song. So this is a match that it sounds so much better than it is. Paul London versus Kid Cash sounds like, oh my God, that is almost like not a dream match, but that's like the next level down for an early 2000s big time. I can't believe this match actually happened, especially outside of WWE kind of match. However, this match, it was good, but it was not better than good. They were blowing spots. They it was a bad day for both of them. And Kid Cash is no Jerry Lynn being able to work around someone's weaknesses. Paul London is still pretty green, and Kid Cash, like I said, is not the kind of guy that can work with somebody who's really green and carry them when they're having an off night like London was. They There were multiple instances of them falling on top of each other. Um, they did do some really nice spots. So interspersed between the sloppy wrestling was some really fun, spots. They did the Kid Cash throwing a chair at Paul London's face spot, where Paul London caught it and threw it right back at Cash. Um, by the way, wasn't Kid Cash turning heel like 2 months ago?
Yeah, but he also stood up for Amazing Red after Siaki was going to continue to beat him down.
Yeah. Well, they
And
both
Pussy Swift
teased
Trinity
winning.
now, so yay, face.
Yeah.
What the? Hold on. I'm sorry. I got to say this about the closed captions. I said he is now with Trinity now, and the captions said Pussy Swift Trinity now. I'm sorry, that just made me laugh.
I don't even know what captions you're talking about.
I have captions on. We do this over Zoom, and I
Yes, we
have
do.
captions going to also know what you're saying, so kind of see where I could go on my notes.
Did you know we do this show on Zoom? I was unaware of this.
No, I thought we were doing it on ICG.
So, they both teased winning with a backslide or a double springboard, what a maneuver, but Cash won with, I think, the moneymaker. I looked away, and when I looked up, the match was over, and they didn't bother showing a replay because that would be too much.
Yeah, it was the
After,
moneymaker.
yeah, after the match, you know, because everything Vince Russo does is a swerve. So after the match, Kid Cash picks up Paul London and holds up his arm. And I was just in the middle of writing, swerve, Kid Cash turns heel. And then the segment just ended because we had a swerve of a swerve. And, you know, it did not happen. They just held each other's hand up. Now, despite all the complaints I had, this so far is the best match on the show. Not that that's saying a whole lot considering the matches we've already had. And suddenly watching, I'm sorry, the problem with watching most of the first hour of this show had me at my normal level of bitterness. And suddenly I completely understand why all those monthly TNA shows for years started with the X Division title match. So at least if you're only going to get one good match, you might as well put it on first. I gave this match a 6.0 out of 10.
I gave it a 7 out of 10. I thought it was a bit better. It really tried to undo the stench of Disgraceland, but it's close, but not
For
close
some
enough.
for some reason, Mike Tenay was surprised to find out that Goldilocks was in the SEX locker room, even though Goldie has been in and out of there all night. Siaki's in there trying to motivate Low Key and Mike Sanders, while Ron and Don just stood silently in the corner. So then we get a wacky interview from earlier in the day where Mike Tenay speaks with Jonah. Now you might be like, who the fuck is Jonah? And mind you, that's not super important. But Jonah is a man who was a runner up on the third season of Tough Enough on MTV, the one that was won by Matt Capitelli and John last name, Johnny Morrison, Johnny TV, Johnny Impact, etc. And so yeah, and actually the funny thing was he was actually my pick to win the show. So of course he lost. And he talked about how he wanted to be a professional wrestler. Well, spoiler alert, he doesn't last long. Okay. So now we get Jonah from Tough Enough in what is his third ever match. It's important to note this is the third match that Jonah from Tough Enough ever has. So, and the first match he's ever wrestled on live television. And now TNA has, like, mind you, they've got a lot of young guys, but they also have a lot of good young guys. A lot of guys that, even in a worst case scenario, could carry a young guy into an acceptable, you know, third match of his career match on pay per view. I know we saw Jerry Lynn earlier, but Jerry Lynn, he probably could have had a good match with Truth. By the way, Truth's not even on this show at all. AJ's in the main event, so it couldn't be him, but like, you know what I mean? There's enough good talent on this show that they could have brought somebody out there to have a nice little fun 4 or 5 minute match with Jonah to get his feet wet and go from there. So instead, we have him wrestle the second worst wrestler in the company. Well, Sandman's here, so it's probably a debate whether he's the second or third worst at this point. But Mike Sanders. Oh yeah, I bet Glenn Gilberti. He could have had a better match with Glenn Gilberti. But
Yeah,
like we've said,
that's what I was about
Glenn
to say.
Yeah, Glenn Gilberti is a decent enough wrestler when he's actually trying. But no, we got Mike Sanders. Mike fucking Sanders. So again, we can't use people to their strong points, although at this point, I'm starting to doubt Mike Sanders has a strong point. But anyway, Don West tells us that he thinks the only reason Matt Cappotelli won Tough Enough was because of the Bob Holly incident. Um, Now, for those who
Ooh.
don't remember, on Tough Enough, there was an incident where the remaining wrestlers had a tag match against the coaches, and one of them was Bob Holly. And Bob Holly was in a mood that day because it was the day after, like it was taped the day after Brock Lesnar dropped him on his head that time when
Uh-oh.
he dead weighted Brock on a power bomb.
Yeah.
And so this was the day after, and of course he decides he's Bob Holly. He's going to be a dickhead and kept kicking Matt Cappotelli full force in the face, and basically taking advantage of this guy who's basically told to do whatever Bob says, and Bob says to sit in the corner and let me kick you in the face, and it was a big controversy at the time. And so anyway, this, for the record, is the only time that the Bob Holly Matt Cappotelli incident will ever be mentioned on a live nationwide pro wrestling TV show. Because yeah, WWE completely ignored it because of course Matt Cappotelli never made it to the main roster for a couple different reasons because he almost got brought up a couple times, but it kept not happening. But yeah, it never happened. It never got brought up in WWE ever, like the Daniel Puder Kurt Angle incident. Just it never happened. No matter what you say, it did not happen, even though it happened. So anyway, Mike Sanders not just has Glenn Gilberti with him at ringside, he has a random blonde woman. And maybe you know who the fuck this is, but my guess, and heaven knows I could be right, I could be wrong. I think it might have been one of those people who won an auction and that like maybe like the person who got to have like a round of golf with Kurt Hennig, and then Kurt Hennig went and died, so they're not gonna have a round of golf with him. And so it was like one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, they won an auction, so we got to do something with them. And hey, she's pretty, she's got big boobs. Hey, would you like to distract Jonah? And I I don't know, maybe she was somebody and nobody knows who the hell it is, but Nobody knows who the hell this woman is.
I didn't know who she was either. I thought she was Michelle McCool.
It was not. Nobody in this segment is going to ever go into the WWE Hall of Fame. But by the way, Jonah, who made a point that his dream is to become a pro wrestler, didn't even have gear. He just had track pants. And also, he was limping to the ring. Did you notice that?
Yeah. I looked up his cage match page, which oddly enough kind of adds credence to a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. And
he wasn't that good.
I mean, it's not that he wasn't that good. It's like outside of this, pretty much his entire 2-year career is working New England independents. I mean, it was what it was.
Yeah.
But I will say he looked better for the first 20 seconds than Mike Sanders has ever looked in his entire career. Sanders quickly took over. He grounded Jonah. Sanders is the worst Lion Salt ever and almost gets submitted to the STF. But random
Oh god,
blonde
that was
woman showed
bad.
Jonah. Yep. Random blonde woman showed Jonah her tits, and Sanders pinned him with that wacky backbreaker that Randy Orton does, where he drops to his knees and, you fall across his back.
He calls it the 3.0.
Yeah, I had no idea he ever called it that. So this was a loser
He's
leaves town
above
match.
average.
Yeah. This was a loser leaves town match. Jonah will never be back. Never, never, ever. 1.0 out of 10.
Sounds about right. I gave it a. What did I give this? I gave it a 2.
It was better than Disgraceland.
Oh, come on. Disgraceland might be the second worst match we've watched in TNA.
I don't know. We watched like a dozen Bruce matches. So we then get another completely useless segment. We get the interrogation with the Sandman, and Sandman said Raven was his toughest opponent and then didn't answer anything else. TNA understands that even though they record these things, that doesn't mean that they have to air them. You know, I don't know. I didn't force them to air this. I don't know about you.
I mean, that was another minute that could have been dedicated to the flip a coin on a match. The Key Cash Paul London match could have used an additional minute.
I don't know that. I don't know. They probably would have fallen apart even more at that point.
It
Raven
was
and
between
Low
that and the main
Key.
event.
Raven and Low Key versus the Sandman and Steve Corino. Remember how Raven debuted in TNA running in from the crowd and DDTing Jeff Jarrett? And then remember how nobody ever remembers anything he did between that and the title match he has in April with Jarrett? Well, here in February, he is having a random series of matches multiple weeks in a row with the Sandman in 2003. And Raven is cutting promos about stealing Sandman's wife and son in 2003. So let's break down the 4 people in this match. Raven is being built up to a world title match against Jarrett. Low Key and Steve Corino have Japanese commitments that keep them from being able to get pinned in the match. So 3 of the people in this match can't lose. Who do you think is going to lose this match?
The audience.
Yeah. Sandman had his awful Enter Sandman ripoff to the point I was nearly begging for them to go into the future and steal that awful WWE theme song he had. So the bell rang while Sandman and Carino were still in the bleachers drinking beer. And I would say this was a crazy brawl all over the arena, except they didn't go all over the arena. They were in the exact same spot in the arena. Raven gave Piledriver a Sandman through a table full of programs. I don't know what was wrong with those programs, but apparently they must have sucked. Finally, the crazy four-way brawl breaks down into a tag team match. Sandman took a whopping 2 minutes to drag himself away from the table to the ring. Remember when Terry Funk gave a pile driver to Ric Flair through a table and Flair couldn't wrestle for 6 weeks? This
Yeah.
week, it's just the transition move. Upon getting to the ring, Sandman gets the cold tag and runs mild. Low key almost pins Sandman with a mystery move because the camera was busy looking at Carino and Raven on the ground. Sandman almost won with a White Russian leg sweep, but Raven pinned him with an even flow DDT. I mean, the match was exactly what he thought it would be. Raven, Low Key, and Carino more than made up for the Sandman here. But it's so fucking weird that again, Raven is like being built for that match with Jarrett, and what the fuck is he doing? He's doing random tag matches with the Sandman here in 2003. I gave this match a 5.0.
I give it a 6.0. Really solid brawl. Um, I mean, earlier in the show, Raven challenged Sandman to a Clockwork Orange House of Fun match, which is another thing I do want to spend some time on when we get to that show.
I think we can talk about a match when we get to a match. So then, here's what is kind of insane at this point. So we all know Vince Russo's style of booking. Vince Russo's style of booking not just involves many random gimmick matches for no reason at all, but it also involves nonstop post-match brawling, nonstop interference and angles, even when it's not needed. So far, we've had 6 matches, and only one match has had any of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what drugs he was on this week, but apparently it was the good shit.
Yeah. I also have some bad news, though.
What?
This is Steve Corino's last time in TNA. He will never return.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
there's a match. There's a match that I know he definitely has.
When?
There's some random tag match that I know he has. I don't remember who they face. It may have been the Heresies, but it's him and the Sandman. And Carino goes to the ring. The Sandman walks around the ring, and the bell rings, and Steve Carino gets beat in 30 seconds. Like,
I'm looking this up now.
I know that happens. Like, I can't tell you when. I can't even tell you for sure that it's the Heresies, but I know that match happens. I have a weird memory of that actual match because it was just so needlessly random but it's like,
no, you're right, and yeah, you're right. Move on. My mistake.
I'm afraid to ask, is that match next week?
No, it's
Nope,
well
it's
into the
in a
future.
month. Oh, it's in a month.
Yeah.
All right. So NWA World Champion Jeff Jarrett versus AJ Styles. Pre-match prediction. This match will go about 12 minutes, and then Vince Russo and Sex will interfere. Stone Cold Jeff Jarrett will fight off 12 top heels by himself and then pin AJ. But at least the first 12 minutes will happen, right? So that was my pre-match prediction. Turns out I was a little wrong. But this is the first singles match between AJ and Jeff Jarrett, who do go on to have probably like half a dozen other matches for the title. Maybe if
Most
more
of them
than
a
half a
lot better
dozen.
than this.
Yeah. And the match was fine. But of course, it it was all about the interference. So Larry Zbyszko runs down and does some very subtle interference while the referee was looking in a different direction. J.J. Dillon came out and made Larry leave. AJ, I don't know what he went for, but what he did was a springboard sleeper hold. That probably wasn't the move he was actually going for. Jarrett ducked a flying move, and AJ takes out the referee because it's a Jeff Jarrett world title match. So, of course, this is Jeff Jarrett's modus operandi. Jarrett hits a stroke, has AJ pinned for 20 seconds. A referee runs down to take over, and AJ kicks out. Jarrett with a monkey flip sent AJ into the second referee. Down ran the Harrises, who gave Jarrett the H-bomb. Vader and Dusty Rhodes run in for the save. They attack the Harrises in a brawl that takes away any and all interest in watching their match next week. After the four of them fight away from ringside, Jarrett and the referee recover. This next part's kind of important. Well, ish. AJ hits the Styles Clash. The referee counts to 2. Jarrett kicks out. And then the referee rolls back outside to be unconscious some more. He rolls back inside, but doesn't see Sonny Siaki come down and give Jeff Jarrett the Siakalypse twice. By the way, yes, the referee who had counted to 2 was still recovering from his beating a minute ago. AJ then showed that it's a swerve. He's not with Vince Russo because he gave Sonny Siaki a screwed up Styles Clash where he couldn't get his leg around one of Siaki's arms. And then Jarrett, after being hit with 2, the former X Division champion gave Jeff Jarrett his finisher twice, and Jeff Jarrett essentially popped right up and gave AJ Styles the stroke to retain the title. So it wasn't 12 people, but we did have 4 people cheating on behalf of AJ and, of course, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett overcomes it all to win. 7.0 out of 10. However,
rematch 7 out of 10.
Yep. However, this is TNA, so we can't end the show on a high note because instead of just ending the show and moving on with our lives, we go to Vince Russo's car because when he left the arena, he apparently took a cameraman with him. And we are informed that he is outside of Jeff Jarrett's house. And he is going to go into Jeff Jarrett's house to talk to his wife and kids. And that's how the show ends. The teaser for next week is that Vince Russo is going to meet with Jeff Jarrett's wife and children.
Yeah, I know what happens next week. There are certain lines which just make me immediately uncomfortable as a wrestling fan. When that line gets crossed, I tune out big time. Remember the time when I think it was Sasha made fun of David Flair's death in a feud with Charlotte Flair? I think it was it Sasha? Was it Sasha Banks? It was somebody.
I don't know it. So it actually was Paige.
Right, Paige. I was looking forward to this match, but now I'm done. I don't care. That line gets crossed. And I don't care. I don't care to see anything else involving Russo and Jarrett. I don't care. We'll talk more about it next week.
Did anybody really give a shit about what's going on with Jarrett and Flair now?
You mean Jarrett and Russo?
Yeah, Jarrett and Russo, excuse me.
Like Russo kept on harping about how he knew Jeff Jarrett better than anybody, even his own family and stuff like that. So, whatever.
No, nobody gives a shit. What did you think about the title match?
I liked it. I gave it a 7 out of 10. By the way, pop quiz. What did Meltzer give this match, according to the Wrestling Observer
I,
newsletter?
I have no idea. I didn't bother to look at the star ratings.
I found this on Cage Match. 3 3/4 stars.
Okay.
So for TNA, that's really damn good.
All right, so this fucking show ends. And again, this was a better than usual show, even though the overall score will not reflect that for actually one and a half major reasons. So, average match quality. Now, we had a 7.0 match, we had a 6.0, we had two 5.0s. We also had a 0. We also had a 1. Average match quality 3.93. Not even 2 stars as the average match on this show. Overall enjoyment. I still gave it a 5.5 out of 10, but it's still hard to get into these shows when you turn them on with a sense of dread. So even when you have a decently good show, you're like, fuck this. And then future build. How much did this show make me want to buy next week's show based on what they promoted for next week? What did they promote for next week? They promoted Dusty Rhodes Invader versus the Heresies, and we're going to find out what Vince Russo did or said to Jeff Jarrett's family. Who gives a flying fuck? 0 out of 10. Nobody wants to fucking watch that shit. And that gives us an overall rating for this show that was considered a good show of a 3.14. Way to go, Vince Russo. Way to fucking go.
I think we're done.
What are your overall thoughts on this show?
I thought it was a good show, marred by a couple of horrendous segments. Disgraceland, which we went in depth on. Also, when it came to that bit at the end with Russo crossing that line, it just killed it for me. So at the end, 4.5 out of 10 for the overall show.
Doesn't this make you want to go pay $10 to watch next week's show now? Honestly, like here's the thing, if like I don't know why anyone would even buy TNA at this point, but let's say you buy TNA because you want to watch AJ Styles have a good wrestling match or Jerry Lynn have a good wrestling match. At this point, how many good wrestling matches are we getting in 1 month? So if you're $40, how many good matches are we getting? 3 or 4? Well, for the same $40, you can go buy 2 Ring of Honor DVDs at this point, and I guarantee you it had a much better show overall. So that does it for this week. I think we're good now. We went at this point nearly 90 fucking minutes. Anything else you want to say before we finish thing up?
Next week's show looks promising. Looking at the
Oh
matches.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's I bet next week's show just flies off the page. But yeah, so that's gonna do it for this week. Thank you to everyone for listening. At this point, I don't even we're suffering for your enjoyment, people. But thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye bye.